I'm back with a review of Fanon's Black Skin White Masks. In this video I'm going to talk about chapter 6, which is titled The Black Man and Psychopathology. Here Fanon talks about how the same Eurocentric novels and movies which were very popular in Europe were also very popular in the colonies. So in a place like Martinique, Martinican children grew up watching things like The Legend of Tarzan and other such Eurocentric films and novels who speak of the noble white adventurer, the white explorer, who left their comfort zone to go and spread civilization to darkest Africa. So Fanon says, consequently, through viewing that kind of propaganda, young black children in Martinique and other colonies would subconsciously attach whiteness to good and darkness to evil, because the civilized white adventurer is usually up against the dark-skinned native trying to protect their land. The Tarzan stories, the tales of young explorers, the adventures of Mickey Mouse, and all the illustrated comics aim at releasing a collective aggressiveness. They are written by white men for white children. And this is the crux of the matter. In the Antilles, and there is no reason to believe the situation is any different in the other colonies, those same magazines are devoured by the local youth. And the wolf, the devil, the wicked genie, evil, and the savage are always represented by blacks or Indians. And since one always identifies with the good guys, the little black child, just like the little white child, becomes an explorer, an adventurer, and a missionary who is in danger of being eaten by the wicked Negroes. They'll tell us it is not that important, precisely because they haven't given any thought to the role of these comics. In the Antilles, the black schoolchild who is constantly asked to recite "Our ancestors the Gauls" identifies himself with the explorer, the civilizing colonizer, the white man who brings truth to the savages, a lily-white truth. We have said, rather too quickly, that the black man feels inferior. The truth is that he is made to feel inferior. Here's what Chinya Achebe had to say about this same topic.
I went through university, the first university in Nigeria, and we went and did a course in English literature, and we were taught the same kind of literature that British people taught in their own universities. But I began to look at these books from in a different light. I realized suddenly that I was, in fact, one of the savages. That when I had been younger, I had read these adventure books about the good white man, wandering into the jungle, on the danger, and the savages were after him. I would instinctively be on the side of the white man. I realized that I was one of those savages jumping up and down on the beach. I was not on Marlowe's steamer.
For example, the romanticization of explorers like Henry Morton Stanley, framing his exploits in Africa as a kind of adventure, when in reality it was just invasion, theft, destruction, and mass murder. Even someone like Stanley, who wrote in detail and was very honest about his atrocities in Africa, is still viewed in a positive light, and even has a statue built in the UK still standing to this very day. Although Fanon specifically talks about his fellow Antillians in this chapter, a lot of what he describes really reminds me of the same behavior among other subjects of French colonization in Africa. Take the notorious dictator, the infamous dictator John Bedell Bokassa. John Bedell Bokassa was one of the most brutal and bizarre dictators Africa has ever had. His story is a very sad one. At 6 years old, he witnessed his dad being executed by French colonial authorities for leading a rebellion against the French. His mother soon after committed suicide because she couldn't bear with the loss. This did not make him develop hatred for the French. In fact, it did the exact opposite. He saw French culture as infinitely superior to his own. Of course, the French also did the heavy lifting in that regard. They made sure they drilled in the mind of all their colonized subjects that French culture was superior to their own. He went on to join the French colonial army. He fought in Indochina. He fought in anti-colonial wars on the side of the French. He fought for the preservation of the French Empire. Because of his exploits in the French colonial army, putting down resistance, he kind of felt he was a part of the team. He was French. Once he seized power, Bokassa went on to display one of the most grandiose waste of resources Africa has ever seen. In a country where most of the citizens were wallowing in poverty, did not have access to the basic amenities, struggled to get clean water, access to healthcare, Bokassa thought it was a good idea to stage a coronation which cost $100 million in today's money, where he declared himself the Emperor of Central African Republic in full French style because he was obsessed with their culture. Of course, with the active encouragement of the French. Interestingly, the discourse about this man, this crazy man, Bokassa, by the outside world is always in a way to mock Africans. As pathetic as he was, no doubt, nobody ever seems to want to talk about the root cause. What is the root cause of that inferiority complex? Who gave him that inferiority complex? Did he just develop it naturally? Of course not. The French sowed the seed of inferiority in all their colonies by exalting French culture and demeaning the culture of the natives. Fanon wrote something that I thought was very similar to the story of John Bedell Bokassa, but since this chapter was dealing primarily with his fellow Antilleans, he said that situation did not apply to them. We are entitled, however, to ask how total identification with the white man can still be the case in the 20th century. Very often, the black man who becomes abnormal has never come in contact with whites. Has some former experience been repressed in his unconscious? Has a young black child seen his father beaten or lynched by the white man? Has there been a real traumatism? To all these questions, our answer is no. Mind you, Fanon wrote this book in the 1950s, so long before John Bedell Bokassa came into prominence, he would not have known about his story. Fanon also talks about the morbid obsession with the black male genitalia in this chapter, but I will not really go into it too tough. In the next part, I'm going to talk about chapter 7, which is titled The Black Man and Recognition.